What's going on, everyone? Welcome back to the episode of Primetime Sports Podcast, hosted by Joey McLaren. So today's a very special episode. I have one of my classmates from one of my classes at BC, my buddy Jason from Taiwan, here in the studio to talk some NBA and ACC tournament. Jason, how are we doing today?
What up, guys? Thanks for having me. My name's Jason, and I am Joe's BC's classmate.
Yes.
And we're here to talk about basketball, which I'm very enthusiastic about. And a little bit like background about me. I used to play basketball in high school in Shanghai and play varsity, I would say semi-varsity in college in London.
Wow.
And here I am at BC. But last year I was in University of Washington, which is in Seattle. So Boston has been pretty good so far. I've been here for 2 months, pretty stable, transportation is pretty good. Yeah, so far good.
I can tell you're enjoying Boston, which is great. I think the nice thing is about your experience, too, is you've kind of been everywhere now. You grew up in Taiwan, right? And then you moved to, was it London, right, you said?
I moved to Shanghai when I was 10.
Shanghai, okay, yeah.
And moved to London when I was 18.
Okay.
And stayed in London for 4 years.
And then Washington for a year, right? And now
for
Boston.
A year. There you go.
Okay, so you've kind of been everywhere, which is really nice. What would you say your experience is like now in Boston? Like, it's probably different than even Washington, let's say, last year, right? I mean, the weather might be not really as great. I mean, Washington, it's probably a lot of rain. Boston hasn't had a lot of rain recently, but obviously cold here, which is a little different maybe from, what you've been in before. But what's the weather like in Washington compared to here? It's probably a lot of rain, right?
I was very lucky because usually it rained a lot, but last year we had a lot of sunshine. So far it's been good. And I heard from a lot of friends when I came to Boston that this year, Boston's weather is pretty nice too. So I'm a very lucky guy in terms of weather, lifestyle in the United States, because obviously I think compared to London, the sports in the United States, like pretty much everyone is so passionate about sports, and, the university facilities and sports facilities are very complete.
Yeah.
And, it's so fun to watch sports games. I haven't got a chance to watch a Celtics game right now because of the tickets. The team is performing so well.
They're expensive.
So they're expensive, yeah.
They're expensive. But the nice thing about being here is there's a lot of colleges, so you can go see BC play and stuff like that, which is really nice. And, there are good universities around here in college basketball, like Providence, UConn. They're not too far away, so you can always go see a good game.
That's a good
Celtics
idea.
tickets are very expensive, like you said, which is the tough thing. But you were at the University of Washington, and last year they were very good at football, even this year as well. So I'm sure seeing games across the country was obviously really cool. And you were at Washington at the perfect time. I mean, they were great in football last year and this year.
Yeah.
Almost won the national championship. What's it like, though, going from Washington now to BC? Two big sports schools. I mean, very different schools, but two big sports schools. Obviously, Washington, historically, look at their basketball and football programs. BC, too, has this historic, sports department, especially hockey, has been very rich in history. And then even, basketball's had their seasons in football as well. But going from Washington, a powerhouse in football, now to BC, like a powerhouse in hockey, what's that like going from two sports schools, obviously very different schools, but two sports schools? And what I mean by very different is Washington's competing for national championship in football. BC's probably not going to compete for national championship in football, but, obviously very rich in sports, and Boston's a big, sports town. But what's it like, though, the transition from, one sports school to another?
I think I would talk about the similarities first, just seeing how high level they're performing in sports is just so mind-boggling. I went to two UW game, and one is UW basketball game, and one is against the UCLA, and you're just seeing everyone dunking so effortlessly.
Yeah, it's crazy when you go to those games and the guys are huge and they're windmilling and stuff on breakaways. It's crazy.
And I think the athletes, because last year I was doing my first master in education policy, but I did take a few classes in sports, and that's how I came across a few student athletes. And I would say the interesting thing I see about student athletes is how versatile and how they're dominating in not just sports but also academics.
Definitely.
They're super intelligent. They have their opinions about everything. They have their perspectives, and that just I would say impressed me a lot. And they're super humble. And sometimes you do see some of them working out in the rec center somehow. I saw one of a few basketball players working out in the rec center, and you're seeing them. You think they're student athlete, but then they're practicing things that are so basic. Like, for example, just doing like trap bar deadlifts, so just which like, most people do.
Yeah, just like we're doing if we're going on a day working out. They're
core,
they do everything.
They do everything. They do everything. So that's impressive, just seeing how outstanding they are, and also how down to earth and normal like everyone else.
Yeah.
So that's what I see from student athletes and sports and universities.
That's cool though, and I really like how you pointed out that they work out similar to the way we do, and then obviously you add in like the hours of practice they have in film study. Like it is a lot being a student athlete, especially at a big school like Washington, like BC, and two very good academic schools. So it's not like you can really not be showing up to class and not do your work. Like those are two great schools academically, so you obviously have to show up in the classroom and obviously for practice and games. Like it's a lot obviously to balance, but it's great though the experience you've had going from Washington to BC, growing up in Taiwan, and then moving to Shanghai. Like, what was that like too, like playing basketball? Because basketball is big, especially if you look at the whole world. Like, basketball is a big sport. Soccer is probably the biggest, but like basketball is getting bigger, by the day because of guys who we'll talk about in a minute. But guys like Luka Doncic growing the game. Like, the game of basketball is growing. What was that like growing up playing basketball overseas? It's obviously probably different than it is playing here.
Yep, I would say back in when I was a kid.
Back in Taiwan?
Which wasn't a long while ago, but back in Taiwan, we are mostly enthusiastic about baseball.
Yes,
so
that too.
Yeah,
yep.
So at that time, basketball wasn't a big thing, and also I would say, unlike the United States, where everyone gets to play not just school basketball, but also AAU, you get to play outside of school.
Yep.
But in Taiwan and I would say in Asia, it'll be a little bit different because you only get spots and get to play like organized basketball in schools. So outside, if you're not playing in school, you're probably just attending like I would say recreational games, which isn't as competitive as AAU in the United States. So I would say that if you're not playing in school, it'll be a little bit tough if you want to develop a bit further as a basketball player.
Definitely. Yeah. And that's really cool, though. I mean, you've kind of been, all over the place, seeing the world, which is great. Like, not many kids can say, at your age especially, that they lived in Taiwan, Shanghai, London, Washington, Boston. It's like you really were everywhere, which is awesome. And I can tell from your experience you've really enjoyed it, which is great. And you obviously know a lot of sports as well. Like, I feel like growing up for me, I kind of just, whatever sports I played, I knew a lot about. So I played basketball, baseball, football. So those are sports I kind of focused on. And I feel like with you especially too, like you played basketball, so you obviously followed it growing up. Baseball is obviously big over there in Taiwan too. So did you play baseball?
Yes, I did. I played
because it's a big sport.
Yeah, I played baseball, and an interesting fact about me, like a lot of people think I'm right-handed. I was actually left-handed, and I was trained by my dad to pitch left-handed. So I was forced to pitch left-handed all the time. But actually, I like pitching right-handed. So that kind of develops my left-hand skills in basketball too.
Definitely.
But that is something that I want to point out, that in the United States, you're seeing a lot of athletes who play in different sports, like multi-sports athletes. Like Anthony Edwards, I literally just knew that he played football in high school.
He did,
and he dominated in basketball.
LeBron played football too in high school.
Exactly. So I think multi-sports is definitely something we want to look at in terms of like developing athletic characteristics, you know,
absolutely.
And athleticism.
Absolutely.
That's something that we want to look at.
Absolutely not. I really like how you pointed out the fact that like multi-sport athletes are a lot more apparent nowadays too. When you look at guys like they play just one sport professionally, but in high school they play a lot because they're trying to stay in shape. So Anthony Edwards, maybe in football season, is working out with the football team, playing football, getting in shape for basketball, like stuff like that. So it's really cool though when you can look at a player's career and see the things that, they did to get to where they are. And obviously playing football, playing basketball, two different sports, but they both help you stay in shape.
Exactly.
Both physical games. Obviously football is more physical than basketball, but basketball is a physical game as well. Like, they don't really make it easy on you out there. You get fouled pretty hard driving down the lane. But thank you so much for your insight though on what it's like though, obviously being in Washington, now in Boston, growing up obviously in Taiwan, Shanghai. Like, I really do appreciate you sharing your experience, and thank you for taking the time for coming on here.
No problem.
It's going to be a blast, obviously, talking some NBA as well.
Yes.
So we'll dive into some NBA talk. What are your thoughts on the season so far? We can start anywhere. We can talk about your buddy Luka Doncic having a great start to the season. Shai Gilgeous-Alexander's been balling for Oklahoma City. And that Oklahoma City team is on the rise. Obviously, they're great right now, but they're going to be great for years to come. Or we could talk about a team like the Celtics, Nuggets. Like, we'll let you pick here. What do you want to start with?
I would say I kind of want to start with Luka Doncic.
Let's do it. Yeah.
How impressive to play, like, it's revolutionary to see players playing at a very slow pace. I wouldn't say slow pace, but their own pace.
Yep.
Because I remember back in the days when I was watching NBA, all I know is as long as you outrun someone, you're fine.
Yeah.
Like, you can be an athlete. But if you look at like Luka Doncic, it's not he's slow, but he's like he has a rhythm that's really unpredictable. And he has, like, we talk about in basketball, we talk about 3 levels of. Some people say it's three levels of scoring. Some say 6. But I would say it's 3 here, and he has all 3.
Yep.
Mid range, in the paint, and also deep range.
Yep.
So he has everything. He has the package, and that's just impressive to see, like, a player. If you want to be a professional player, it is okay to not be as athletic as you think. Like, you don't have to be like a super good runner.
You don't need to be Anthony Edwards.
No.
Jumping ability too.
No.
Yeah, absolutely.
So that's something that impressed me a lot, and you can see from Shai as well. I would say Shai is a little bit more athletic than Luka in terms of, like, speed. But then physicality, Luka will probably be better.
Yeah.
But you can see, like, in both of these players, they have mid range. And in this era of deep range and threes, it is important to score in the mid range, in the mid post as well. So that's something that impressed me a lot, and also brought me to attention in the game of basketball. Mid range is coming back.
Yeah, it is, definitely. I think with the game of basketball, it's just so many things changing all the time. Like, now you need centers to be able to shoot threes a lot of the time. So the old, typical original starting centers like Shaquille O'Neal, those guys aren't really as apparent in the NBA anymore, just because you need guys that can shoot from 3, like Karl Anthony Towns, Joel Embiid. Like, the big men are starting to shoot. But also, like you said, the mid-range game is starting to come back as well. And if you look at the NBA too, it's like, in order to be a great team today, like, it's not all about just having 3 superstars. Like, for a while, I think for probably a decade, it was every team needs 3 superstars to win. But the NBA is kind of coming back from that. Now it's more just like, if we can have 2 go-to guys like Jamal Murray and Nikola Jokic, and just have good supporting casts around them, then that's going to be a way we can win a championship. So you look at even the Bucks, like, you got Giannis and Damian Lillard. They have Chris Middleton. I don't consider him on the same level as those 2 guys, but I think the NBA is starting to trend towards a system of, 2 great guys that you can go to, and then some good supporting casts. So like Luka Doncic has Kyrie Irving, that's like another guy, great go-to sidekick. And like you said with Luka, he's really transformed the game offensively. If you look at his numbers this year, it's ridiculous. 35 points almost, 9 rebounds, 10 assists nearly. Like, he's had a great year. Kyrie Irving's played well alongside him. I didn't expect these 2 guys to really merge that well, which it's not like perfect yet. It's getting better, like, over time. But I just considered both these guys as guys that need the ball-dominant guards, which that's fine. I mean, it's not taken away from their game saying they both need the ball in their hands, but it might take away from, them getting the shots that they want. But it hasn't hurt Luka, and Kyrie's still having a good year as well. 25 points a game, 5 rebounds, 5 assists. Like, both those guys are having very good seasons statistically, and the Mavs right now are the 8th seed. I know they're probably hoping to get out of the play-in and try to get, top 6 range to get out of the play-in tournament, but that West right now is, like, so difficult. Like, the Western Conference is really hard to move up in.
It is.
If you look at, like, the Clippers even, like, they're the 4th seed with 3.5 games back right now, Oklahoma City. After that, like, besides the top 4 seeds, that middle of the pack, like 5 through 8 in the West, or even 5 through 10. Exactly. They're all, like, teams that you don't want to play in the playoffs, I'd say. Like, no one wants to play, like, not the Cavs, excuse me. The Lakers right now, the 9 seed, I believe. The Warriors are the 10, where we currently stand. The Mavs are the 8. None of those teams would be easy teams to play in the playoffs. You know what I mean? Even though there is a drop-off from, like, the top 4 records-wise after that. I think the 5th seed right now is the Pelicans, right, I think?
The 5th seed, Pelicans.
So they're like a couple games behind the Clippers, but there is, I'd say, going to be like a great Western Conference playoffs where it's like you can't really expect any team to be an automatic win. Besides maybe Denver maybe winning the first round, whoever they play, just because I feel like with them, they don't really joke around at all when they get to the playoffs like we saw last year. I feel like they could probably, have a 4 or 5 game win against any team in the West if they play their basketball right and they stay healthy, which, with that being said, though, you can't just hand Denver the Western Conference right now. You can't really hand anyone a Western Conference series win right now. What team do you think stands out? Obviously, the Mavericks are starting to click right now, which last year Luka and Kyrie really didn't merge well. I mean, it was only a few games they got to play together, but now things are starting to click. I think when you look at Luka's game, like you said, he can score at any level. And then Kyrie Irving, I think, obviously has had his issues off the court, but if you look at his talent on the court, he's one of the best one-on-one players in the NBA. He can shoot, he can drive, he can get by anybody. I think Kyrie is one of the most talented players in the NBA. So that team will be fun to watch in the playoffs. Hopefully they do get above that top 6 just so they're not in a play-in game. But where do you think the Mavericks end up in the playoffs? Do they average, do they end up being like a 6 seed, a 7 seed, an 8 seed?
I think so far, if you look at the standings, number 5 to number 8, Pelicans, Suns, Kings, and Mavericks are pretty close.
Mm-hmm.
So I would say it's still very hard to predict. But if you look at Mavericks, they're pretty average in terms of like win and loss in home and away games.
Yep.
So I would say they probably end up in 6 or 7.
Okay, I would agree.
Yeah, 6 or 7. Unless, see, that's the thing. Like I think Kyrie is sort of performing. I wouldn't say out of my expectations, but it's just how his game is shifting towards a less ball dominated play style. That's something something new I see from Kyrie.
Mm-hmm.
But I think it definitely takes some time to for him and Luka to adjust to each other's play style. So last year is probably just a test year. But this year it's good to see that they are performing really well, and also they have other shooters, stretch fours. They have some good additions to the team. So I would say 6 to 7. But you can see from teams like Suns, where the team operate in terms of the roster operates in terms of like adding superstars into a team, isn't working that well.
You're right.
And I kind of agree with you that super teams right now, like superstar teams like Lakers, Suns, isn't working that well.
Yeah.
Because you can just put your defensive concentration on a certain guy, like on KD.
Yeah.
And on D-Book.
Yeah, absolutely. And then,
but if you're dealing with like the Thunders, you can't really do that because
they have a lot of guys.
They have all the guys.
And they're all young too.
Timberwolves, it's the same. You can't really target one person.
Mm-hmm. I would agree with you. If you play against the Suns, you can kind of target Kevin Durant and then say to Book, we'll let Book get his 35.
Bradley Beal's still hurt.
He's been banged up all year. Even when he's playing too, he's not looking like the same Bradley Beal. But when you look at that Suns team, I think, you could say, let's try to just stop Kevin Durant from getting 28. So let's keep him under 27 and under. And then we'll let Book get his 35, and then let's not let anyone else beat us type of thing, right?
Yeah.
And, that's the thing with that Suns team is, they didn't really have the depth the last few years. They have a little more depth this year than they did in years past. A lot of those guys coming over were, free agent signings for cheap, like Eric Gordon they got for cheap after the Clippers got rid of him. And then they got, Yusuf Nurkic in that trade with the the Trailblazers. But I think when you look at that team, though, like you said, I think the NBA is kind of trending away from the 3 superstar motto where it's like you need 3 superstars to win. Because, the Celtics right now have, I'd say, I don't know who you consider a superstar because, at the end of the day, it's like you got Jaylen Brown, Tatum, Drew Holiday, Kristaps. They're all, very different players, but at the same time, all could be the best player on the floor any given night. I'd say, I guess, a superstar in Tatum, even though I'm more critical of Tatum than most people are. I guess you'd have to consider him a superstar. And then Jaylen Brown's probably right under that probably level. And then Drew Holiday and Kristaps are just great players as well. So I guess they're a little bit different than those Western Conference teams we mentioned, like the Suns. The Clippers even have those 3 superstars, which I'm a Clippers fan. I hope things do work out this season. But we've seen them go cold some nights, and we've seen some holes with that team that makes me worry for the playoffs a little bit more than it did a month or so ago. But
sorry.
Go ahead.
Just to interrupt on that, just to add to that point, I think superstar teams, we need to, whether superstar teams are going to work well really comes down to whether if someone is hot, can the other 2 players play as a role player?
Yeah.
Because if you look at the Suns, it's really hard because D-Book and KD, they need the ball. They need the ball to be hot. But if you look at Celtics, Drew is performing really well.
He's great.
But if things are not clicking, he can be the defensive player of the game to stop the game and to give give like Tatum and Jaylen Brown fast breaks and threes and all these offensive, like reduce the liability on defense.
Definitely. I think that's the biggest part of it.
And if you look at Clippers, I would say only James Harden is more ball dominated.
He is.
If you look at Paul George and Kawhi, they're less ball dominant, and that's why things works well. So
they work off each other well on offense.
Yeah.
You know, they can both play off the ball. I think with Harden even too, he's accepted his role in the offense where he's not taking 20 shots a game like he was typically used to. Now he's in the lower range, like 10 to 12, maybe 14. Russell Westbrook even sacrificed. Before he got hurt, he was sacrificing a lot of minutes, which helped make things work. But I think you said it perfectly. Like there are going to be nights when there's one guy that's on the Celtics and the other guys have to just play around them. And I am more of a fan of Jaylen Brown than I am Jason Tatum. I think Jason Tatum probably gets more praise, and rightfully so. I mean, he's a very talented player, but I think in a lot of big moments, I've seen Jason Tatum not
fall
show
short.
up, which is my problem with him. But a very talented player, nevertheless. If I were picking between the two guys, I'm more of a Jaylen Brown fan. I've probably been more of a Jaylen Brown fan both, while they were both in Boston their entire careers. I've probably been more of a Jaylen fan more than I've been a Tatum fan, just because I feel like Tatum does fall short in some of those big moments. But Jaylen has had his problems too. That's why I think adding a guy like Jrue Holiday that's very short-handed, doesn't turn the ball over, smart IQ for the game, can guard Kevin Durant, can guard Giannis. Like he's a very versatile player. And then you add a guy like Porzingis who can shoot threes. He can help you defensively. Even though I had some critiques of Porzingis defensively, just because I thought he played a little bit softer in years past because he always was injury prone. He's impressed me on the Celtics, and he has had some injuries, but not any serious ones. He's been a great player and a great addition for them. But what teams?
Player.
Absolutely. What teams stand out for you in the East besides the Celtics, which we already talked about them now? Do you like the Cavs?
I love the Cavs.
I love the Cavs too. So let's talk about the Cavs.
Yeah, I mean, you can see how Donovan Mitchell transformed as a player.
Yep.
Because if you remember when he was in the Jazz, his offensive style is a bit more leans towards getting to the paint.
Yep. Driving down the paint.
Driving down the paint. But if you see 70 point game performed when he was in the Cavs, which is this. Was it this?
It was last year.
Last year, right?
Believe, yes.
He scored in deep ranges.
Yeah, he did. He did. It was January 2nd, 2023, so last year, 71 points.
Last year.
But he did a lot that game. Yeah, that was a crazy game. It was like 145 to like 140 or 145 to 134 there.
Overtime.
Overtime. That was just a crazy game. He is shooting the ball pretty well, too, like 37% from three. Does take, on average, 9 threes per game. But with that offense, though, it's like they don't really have too many shooters, I guess, besides Max Strus.
Darius, Garland.
And Garland, yeah. Besides those three guys, they're not really taking that many threes. I guess guys like Dean Wade has had his nights and Sam Merrill as well. But if you look at that team, though, you need Garland and Mitchell to take the majority of the threes, and that's why Mitchell has been really stepping up, taking a lot of game. 9.1's more than I thought he would average a game, but 28 points per game nevertheless. Shooting 37% from three. He's had a good season. With that Cavs team, though, I think what stands out to me is even when they don't have Donovan Mitchell, they still beat the Celtics last week. And the Celtics did collapse in the fourth quarter. Jason Tatum was really cold in the second half. I think he was 1 for 12 in the second half. But that team really fought, and that was a game where Garland didn't do much in the fourth quarter. I think he only had a point. And they had guys like Dean Wade step up. And they've had nights where Max Strus stepped up and Jarrett Allen stepped up defensively, which Allen's been a guy that's really surprised me. He's really grown into his own in the NBA. 16 points, 11 rebounds this year. He has been balling. That Cavs team, they just need to stay healthy because they've had injuries this season with Mobley getting hurt and Garland getting hurt, and now Donovan Mitchell being a little bit banged up as of late. I'm hoping that team can stay healthy because I think they can give the Celtics at least somewhat of a run for their money in the playoffs. Yep. And with Joel Embiid getting hurt, the Sixers probably aren't going to be that team that could give the Celtics pressure, which the Celtics have beaten the Sixers, it seems like, every year in the playoffs. But the Cavs could be a team that could give the Celtics some problems. The Bucks even. And then even the Knicks, if they're healthy, I know a lot of people love what they see from the Knicks. They just haven't had a fully healthy lineup. The Knicks could be a team that could give the Celtics some trouble because they are great defensively. They do play strong defense.
Okay, here's something that I'm really concerned about because right now the Knicks are performing really well with Jaylen Brown,
Jalen Brunson,
Josh Hart,
yep,
and Dante DiVincenzo. But I'm not sure how these three fits into the game when Julius Randle comes back.
Yeah, and
because he does
too,
slows the game down a little bit, and I'm just curious how they fit into his playing style because he does play a little bit more post up games, which slows down the the pace a little bit.
Mm-hmm. And he takes a lot of shots too, so he's going to take away shots from guys like OG Anunoby and Josh Hart and Dante DiVincenzo.
Yep.
Even Jalen Brunson will take away a couple shots from. And that team just needs to stay healthy, really. Like, I don't think they're capable of winning the NBA Finals. I know a lot of Knicks fans are very high on them.
And, unfortunately, no.
I just think that East is going to probably come down to the Celtics, Cavs, or Bucks. And it's not just because of the top 3 seeds, but when I watch those teams play, I think they could especially the Bucks and Cavs, they could give the Celtics a run for their money in a series. And I think the Knicks can maybe, win a game or two against the Celtics. They do play good defense. And if the Celtics have a bad shooting night, maybe they could steal a game or two. But I agree with you. I think when you look at that team, I don't think they have enough to beat the Celtics necessarily, but they are a fun team to watch. Like, they do have guys stepping up, and I know without Brunson, Brunson's now back, but without Randall for some games, that's obviously been a worry for them. They're 4-6 in the last 10, but they have been competitive. They've been in games, having guys like DiVincenzo step up and Josh Hart. They need Anunoby healthy. They need Mitchell Robinson healthy. That's another guy. And Randall healthy. And at that point, I mean, in the playoffs, anyone can win. That's something we talked about with the West, which the West is a lot more difficult than the East this season, I feel like. The West is very competitive, and the East really only has 3 or 4 teams, and I guess you could consider that could probably win the East, with one of them being, the juggernaut Celtics, then the rest, could compete. The West is wide open. I feel like the East, it's a few teams it comes down to, and I agree. I don't think the Knicks really have enough to beat the Celtics necessarily, but that doesn't mean I'm not rooting for them. I think they're a fun team to watch. They have their nights when some of their role players like DiVincenzo step up and Josh Hart, but I don't think they have enough.
I think it will be very interesting to watch because if you look at the defensive rating, Cleveland scored at number 6 in terms of defensive rating.
Wow.
Which is pretty high.
They play high defense.
Yeah.
Jared Allen's been great in the paint, too. Mm-hmm. Mobley's a good defensive player.
New York Knicks, number 9, which is not bad.
Okay.
Which is not bad. So I think they will probably give a lot of pressure to teams like Celtics and the Bucks.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I think even if you look at that Eastern Conference, it comes down to, those 4 teams like we said. But I think even in the West, they could give some of those teams some trouble because they play really good defense. But obviously, you got to go through the East in order to get to the West. What team was number 1 in the defensive rating?
Celtics.
Celtics. Okay, yeah. Celtics number 1. Okay, so they've been. Here's the thing: the Celtics, everyone really just talks about their offense because they're scoring, at a ridiculous rate, 130, 140. It seems like every other night, but they do play some good defense as well. I think Drew Holiday is a big reason for that. Then Derek White has probably been the best defensive guy this season. He's a guy that's really exceeded my expectations. When I thought he would be a starter for the Celtics this year, I thought maybe he's better as a bench player, but I was completely wrong. Derek White has been terrific this season.
Yep.
He's been great. So we'll let you pick the next team we discuss. It doesn't have to be playoff teams. We can talk about any team. I know at one point we talked about the Hornets because I like Terry Rozier. You like LaMelo, was it?
Yeah.
Ball?
Yeah, I think I do like his flashy style.
Yeah.
And we can talk about how Rozier's impact to the current Miami team.
That's another team that always gives the Celtics trouble.
Yeah.
Like, we only talked about those 4 teams in the East, like Celtics, Bucks, Cavs, Knicks, but the Heat, right now they're the 8th seed. They'd be matching up with the Celtics first round if, that's the way things worked out in the play-in. That wouldn't be an easy series for the Celtics, considering it seems like Eric Spoelstra always has the formula to give the Celtics a tough time. Jimmy Butler, too, when he gets to the playoffs, it's just ridiculous.
Back, yeah.
What do you think makes that Heat team special? Is it their defense? Is it their drive? Like, I think it's more of just the mentality, that Heat culture of, like, they play with the chip in their shoulder. They don't care who they're playing against. They're always going to play up to their competition and give it all they have. What do you think stands out from the Heat? It could be their offense, it could be shooting, it could be defense, it could be their hustle. What do you think?
For me, I would say the offense, because just how diverse their offense is. You have Adebayo, who is very good at the paint, and you can see, what is his name?
Tyler Hero.
Is performing well.
He is. They just need him healthy. That's the guy you need healthy. It's another guy.
But the guy that impressed me a lot is Duncan Robinson.
Yeah.
Because if you compare his performance from past years and this year, you can see there are a lot more playmaking scenarios that he's doing.
Yeah.
Pick and rolls, and also pick and rolls that he played really well with.
You're right. So, you nailed that. He's averaging 2.9 assists per game, which is a career high by over 1 assist per game. His career high was 1.8 in 2020, and now he's got 2.9 assists per game. So he is
2.9%,
making more plays on offense, and he's also shooting the ball well. Shooting right now 41% from 3.
That is pretty high.
Which is really good.
Yeah.
13.4 points per game, which is just about a career high for him. Like, he's had a good season. He's a guy that stands out. I'm happy you mentioned him because a lot of the time I feel like I mention a lot of stars, like, Jimmy Butler when I'm talking about the Heat, or even Adebayo, maybe Tyler Hero. But those role plays are very important to get to the playoffs. Duncan Robinson's a guy that's very important. Just like we mentioned the Mavs a lot, we mentioned Luka and Kyrie. A guy like Tim Hardaway Jr. could be a big guy in a series if he hits a big three late in the game when, Kyrie's cold or Luka's cold or they're getting covered by the best defensive player. Like, role players are a big part of the game. I'm happy you mentioned Duncan Robinson and Tyler Hero. I know that he's been hurt, but if they get him healthy, he would be a big add, obviously, to that offense. I'd love to see that offense fully healthy for a playoff run with Tyler Hero, Terry Rozier, Jimmy Butler, Bam Adebayo. Like, it would be a fun team to watch.
Yeah, I think they're going to cause a lot of problems because obviously we all know playoffs Jimmy Butler is pretty unstoppable. And we also know that playoff Duncan Robinson.
Yeah, he's given the Celtics problems. He has given the Celtics problems.
And this year, Adebayo, All-Star.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
And now they have the addition of Terry Rozier.
And I love Rozier. So, you do too.
Yeah, I do.
I'm a big fan of Rozier. So I think that Heat team will be an interesting one to watch.
Yep.
If you look at the play-in right now, so you got the Pacers at 7, Heat at 8. Then you got the Bulls at 9. There's a big drop-off between the Heat at 8 and then the Bulls at 9 and the Hawks at 10. Then you got the Nets, which the Nets are 3.5 games back right now. But with the Hawks having all the injuries they've had, like Sadiq Bey and Trae Young, I think there's a chance maybe the Nets, if they could get hot in the second half, I guess not even second half, there's only 20 games left to go.
Yep.
If they get hot in the last, couple months of the season, they could potentially be a team, or I guess month of the season, they could potentially be a team that we'd maybe see in the play-in at the 10 seed. At least that's what I'm rooting for. Like, which I want to hear thoughts on the Nets. Like, they're an interesting franchise because they've gone all in a couple times. That Paul Pierce and Kevin Garnett trade, about 10 years ago.
Kyrie
and then
trade.
KD, Kyrie, James Harden. Like, I don't know. They're in an interesting position right now where I think they have a good supporting cast. They just need that number one. I think Bridges is probably more of a number two. I want to hear your thoughts on that. Like, do you think Mikal Bridges is more of a number one option or more of a number two? I think he's probably fits better as a number two and has probably needs a sidekick that's a number one. I'll hear your thoughts on that.
I think right now he will be. I will agree that he'll be on that number 2 spot because you have Cam Thompson.
Yeah, Cam Thomas. Cam Thomas has been balling. Yeah.
Yeah, Cam Thomas. But then it's a pity because both of them are scorers.
They both want to shoot too.
Yeah, they both want to shoot, and you don't have a point guard. And right now Ben Simmons is out for his season. Yeah. So you don't really have a point guard to run the ball.
I guess Schroeder, but even he's a shooter too. He likes to shoot the ball, Dennis Schroeder. So it's like you don't have a point guard to really run the offense, right?
I don't think Schroeder is like a pure pass.
No, he's not
prioritizing.
He might be solid at pick and roll, and he might pick up 6, 7, 8 assists, but he's not gonna make the offense more dynamic.
No.
Like I think James Harden, what he's done with the Clippers offense, he's made that offense really dynamic off the pick and roll. I don't think Schroeder has that same effect. I would agree. I think they probably need, which Schroeder's probably a free agent after this year's over, so maybe one more year left on his deal. So I think they could be in the market for a point guard. Do you think that's what they need? Go get a guy like, I don't know, Trae Young or DeJounte Murray to add to that offense?
I would say yes, but then very unlikely to have players like that because considering that the roster the Nets roster right now isn't really that impressive because for Trae Young, he probably wants a team that gives him more shooters, role players, and he can be the core playmaker.
And probably more of a chance to win, right?
But if you look at the Nets, you have Cam Thomas, who runs the ball most of the time, who shoots I know.
Time.
Some of his shot selections are pretty weird. He make the shot, but then the selection is
it's a weird shot where it's two guys on him and he throws it up in the air, kind of like a Kobe Bryant type situation where if he wants to shoot, he's going to shoot.
And if it's hot, he's hot.
He does get hot. He does have a great feel for shooting the ball. But they're an interesting team. I think you're right about that with the Nets. They're probably more than just one guy away, I'd say. But I do feel bad, to some degree, when I look at teams like that go all in and they just fall flat. With Kyrie, James Harden, and Kevin Durant, they probably should have won. I know they had the injuries with Harden getting hurt, Kyrie getting hurt, KD's foot being on the line against the Bucks. That team was talented enough and dynamic enough to win a finals, but it just shows how hard it is to win. When you look at that team. But it is disappointing when you look back at those years that they had those guys and they didn't really get too far. With a guy like Kyrie, who we already talked about, one of the most talented players, Kevin Durant, probably two of the best one-on-one guys, which I know you don't play basketball, one-on-one, but what I mean by the one-on-one is, in a big situation, the best defensive player of the other team on them, those two guys can get to the rack, they can shoot the ball, they're very dynamic players. But yeah, what are your thoughts on the Nets? I guess if you want to talk about their past, their future, do you think they probably make a big deal, maybe trade for a guy like Donovan Mitchell, which that was a rumor at one point during the season that they were interested in him, but I don't think they're probably going to get him since I don't think the Cavs are going to move him.
I think I will agree with you that the Nets right now needs a primary scorer,
a number one,
who must be way better than Cam Thomas.
Which I like Cam Thomas a lot, but you don't want him to be a superstar, the guy you build around. I like him. He's a good role player to be next to that star.
Like, he played really well with KD.
He did.
But at that time, KD is the primary scorer.
So the defense was focusing on KD and let him get some shots, which I like Cam Thomas. He'll probably be an all-star at some point.
I think Cam Thomas is very similar to that player that reminds me of Jordan Poole.
Jordan Poole, yeah.
Yeah, he played really well with Steph.
You're
but
right.
now he's in the Wizards. Every defensive attention is on him.
Mm-hmm.
But if you cannot run the play, it's really hard. Like, we can see from Jordan Poole right now, he's going to a second unit.
Yeah,
because he couldn't run plays. And if you couldn't run a play, but you also is having a bad night.
Shooting the ball. He's had some bad nights shooting. He's had some good
nights.
Inconsistent. More bad nights than good nights.
But for Steph and KD, they are good scorers. But when their shots are not falling, they become playmakers and contribute to the team.
They still pull that best defensive player on them too. So they're taking a great defensive player away from covering someone else.
Exactly. But if you're looking at Cam Thomas and Jordan Poole, they are great scorers. But if they're not performing well in terms of scoring, they can't really provide anything, which will be important when it comes to playoffs.
Oh, 100%. You're right. When you get to the playoffs, usually those best offensive players are the guys that have to elevate their game even more in a series. And I like Cam Thomas a lot. I think he's going to be an all-star at some point. Jordan Poole, though, as we've seen, like you said, like, it went to a different team, had expectations of he's going to be shooting 20, 25, 30 times a night. He's going to average around 25 points a game. And now you see just how hard it is in the NBA to be the number one guy, especially on a team like the Wizards where it's like he's supposed to be the number one guy, but he really hasn't been this year. And it's like,
no.
And that's a team, as you can tell by their record. I know they beat the Heat yesterday, but 11-53, like, they have had a really rough go of it. 2-8 in the last 10 games. Like, they've had a really rough stretch. Even though they've won 2 in a row, they're still just 11-53. Just like you said, it's just really tough to be the number one guy.
And just to comment on that, and I remember a few weeks ago, I was talking to a friend about the Kevin Garnett comment about how similar James Harden and Jordan Poole are. And I was just saying, because I'm a huge Jeremy Lin fan, I was just saying, like, the difference between James Harden and Jordan Poole was that when James Harden was adjusting to the Houston Rocket team, he can be the primary scorer because Jeremy Lin is the one doing playmaking.
Yeah.
But if you look at Jordan Poole, he doesn't really have that Jeremy Lin next to him.
You're right. He just has that shoot first mentality.
Yeah, he has that shoot first mentality, and he is it with Kyle Kuzma, who is also a shoot first team, shoot first player. So it's really hard for him. I know he had that talent and potential to become a James Harden type of player, but he needs some time. I do think he needs a lot of time to adjust to that role.
Mm-hmm. I would agree with you. I think that's a great point. If you look at that Rockets team, I don't think Jeremy Lin ever got the attention he should have got because James Harden was the flashy guy averaging all those points. He got all the attention, but Jeremy Lin, I just looked at, averaged 6 assists per game a couple seasons with the Rockets. And if you look at the NBA today, 6 assists per game, it was a lot back then, but it's a lot now because I just feel like so many guys have the shot first mentality. They don't want to be a playmaker. Which when I played a lot of my days, like I was a pass first player. Like if I was open and I had a good shooter on the corner open, I would always kick it out. That's the way I've always played. And Jeremy Lin's a guy, would give up that shot. He'd also drive and kick it out. Like he didn't get the attention he deserved. I like that you pointed that out.
I think basketball definitely transformed a lot. I remember when I was playing in college, there's one time we were in the practice and I was talking to my coach like, when do you think I can shoot threes? And he was like, if you can't shoot 80% or 85% in practice, you're not supposed to take threes. Wow,
85%. That's still a lot. Even if you're open, hitting 4 or 5 is tough.
And we used to run plays where we run plays mainly focusing on centers.
Oh, so the paint.
The paint.
Yeah.
So we have that play called high-low all the time. We play high-low all the time. We find our big in the free throw line, and he would literally score 20 games per. 20 points per game, and all of our point guards are not scoring any. We have a lot of assists.
Yeah, I could tell. Yeah, you get the numbers through assists, but you're not getting the points.
Yeah, but now you're seeing basketball transforming into a more point guard, shooting guard dominant. Shooting game, yeah.
Where the power forward now is essentially a small forward, and the center now has to shoot threes. It's like there's no typical 4-5. There used to be like a power forward that was big for the defensive, part of the paint, being an anchor down there, being big in the pick and roll. Now the 4 is basically a small forward essentially, and the center position has now turned into just a shooter's position where you need a guy that can stretch the floor. It's crazy how basketball has changed, and that's really cool that you played over. Was it in London, right? You played?
Yeah, when I was in London. I think my
that's
coach,
awesome.
my coach was a Italian guy, so I think he does play European basketball style a little bit more.
Well, you pass the ball
a lot more. Yeah, your point guard is sort of more playing off ball, and you only shoot when you're literally wide open.
Yes, and there's no one else to kick it out to or dish it to. Like that's,
but it's
that's
hard
different.
because if you can only shoot like 1 to 2 shots, well, obviously your percentage is going to be low.
You're right, 100%. If you're only taking 2 threes a game, and let's say you go 0 for 2 from 3, and then next you only take 1 3, and then you're 0 for 1, and then you're 0 for 3, and then 0 for 2. It's like it's very hard to get a rhythm.
Yeah, exactly.
And you're only taking 1 3 a game.
But I do have a question for you about the recent comment about it is so easy to score in the current NBA games. Do you agree with that?
I think it has become more of a game where it's just about shooting threes and more about scoring 130 every night rather than playing defense, which, I mean, every team has the mentality, has their identity where it's like there are going to be nights when you have, the Warriors back in the day, their identity was, Steph Curry shoots threes with Clay and they just, light it up points-wise. And then you'd have teams like, I don't know, Minnesota this year, they played good defense. I feel like going into this year when they had, Naz Reid getting that contract and Conley Towns and Gobert, their identity was we're going to play really good defense in the paint and obviously let guys like Anthony Edwards lead us on offense and have Conley Towns shooting threes. Every team has their identity.
That block was tough.
Yeah. It's crazy when you watch the Timberwolves play, I feel like, because I think they're capable of making a deep run, but they need guys to stay healthy, and Cat getting hurt, it's tough, but I think they do have a bright future. I like Anthony Edwards a lot, and I'm sure you do as well. Just watching him play, he's fun to watch. But I think every team has their identity, and I feel like most teams in the NBA today, their identity is shooting the ball like the Celtics do, shoot 35, 43s a night, or just win by outscoring the other team rather than playing defense. And I think that's the problem with today's NBA. It's like everybody just wants to score and nobody plays defense. What would you say about that? It's a great question.
I would say yes, because if you're looking at the game right now, scoring 60 plus for multiple games is pretty much impossible in
a place with 60 points.
Yeah, in the past. So I would say it's definitely getting easier. But I think my position is a bit neutral. It is definitely getting easier because the defense is getting softer.
Definitely.
But you also have, I wouldn't say that's the only reason why people are scoring more. You're seeing players like Luka Doncic, Shai, completing their package, making their game more skillful than ever.
SGA is a great example.
Yeah.
He has cut down on shooting threes and is more of like a drive and mid range. Feed the guys around him, and it's been great for him. He's averaging 31 a game.
And I think you gotta give credit to players who constantly and daily improve their game.
Luka's a great example. I mean, he was great already before this year, and he's even better this year. And I've had my critiques of guys like Luka and Jason Tatum because they take a lot of shots per game. And Tatum's gone to the NBA Finals. Luka has had a couple runs in the West, but obviously has never gotten to the finals. But those are two guys that, if you look at their stats, they stand out. Tatum averaging 27 points per game. Luka 35 points per game. Both those guys are scoring a lot. They take a lot of shots though. I think that's the thing with the NBA today is guys are scoring a lot more than they used to because they're taking a lot of shots. Everybody's taking 25 shots.
Correct.
That's just the way the NBA is. I don't blame Luka or Tatum or SGA for taking the shots they do per game. Just because the NBA is really trended towards the best player on the team taking 25 shots a night. And if you look at a guy like Shai, I mean, his first few years in the NBA, 8.7 field goal attempts per game, 14.5, then 16, and then just keeps going up. 18.8 with Oklahoma City in his second year, and then last year 20.3, this year 20.1. Everybody's averaging more shot attempts per game, and obviously it helps their points per game, but it also helps them to get a rhythm shooting the ball as well. Like we noted with the kids that you played with over in Europe, in London, it's tough for point guards to really get a rhythm shooting the ball, only taking 1 3 a game. It's hard to really get hot from 3.
Yeah.
And that's just the way the NBA is now. It's like everybody's taking more shot attempts per game, which the number one option on most teams were already taking 20, 22, 24 shots per game 5 years ago, but now it's every given night they're taking it seems like 28, 30, and that's just the way the league has trended, towards obviously the offensive side. But let's talk about some NBA playoff predictions really quick, and then we'll talk about the ACC tournament as well for a few minutes. So
okay.
I want to get your thoughts on the NBA playoffs. Let's say the NBA playoffs started today. What team do you think gets out of the East? What team gets out of the West? Or you could just name a couple teams if you don't want to just name one.
I would say Celtics and the Bucks are definitely getting out. Well,
so they're going to match up the East Conference Finals?
Match up. But if we're going to say a surprising team,
let's do one under the radar squad.
Yeah,
let's
under the radar.
Name 2 and then one under the radar team.
Ooh, that's tough.
So you got Celtics, Bucks.
I would say either Heat or
the Heat. Okay, I like that. They play hard.
The Pacers.
The Pacers. Okay, that's another team that we haven't really talked too much about. But a guy like Tyrese Halliburton has really transformed them on offense. They're averaging the most points per game in the NBA, 123 points per game, because of Halliburton driving, kicking it out, getting it to the shooters. Obviously, he's been scoring a lot as well. That's an interesting take, though. I like the Pacers.
The Pacers are good. And I think if we were going to say one team who is going to surprise me, that's definitely one team.
I like that.
Yeah.
I like that. So for my Eastern Conference, I'm going to go Celtics and the Cavs end up as the 2 teams in the Eastern Conference
Celtics and the Cavs. Nice.
I think that'd be a fun series to watch. Hopefully the Cavs are healthy by then. I think that'd be a fun one. And then an under-the-radar team, I guess I'm just going to go with Miami. It's not an I guess because they are a good team. But when I'm looking at that bottom, it's the Sixers without Embiid. If Embiid doesn't come back, I don't think they have what it takes to win a playoff series.
And Embiid isn't back, right?
He's not back, and he might not be for the playoffs. So that's a worry. When I look at that 7, 8, 9, 10, Pacers, Heat, Bulls, Hawks, and then it gets even the Nets at 11, the team that stands out the most to me is probably Miami because they do have what it takes.
Yeah.
I guess then in the West, what would you say? So name 2 teams we think end up in the Western Conference Finals, and then maybe an under-the-radar team you wouldn't be surprised, like you named the Heat and I named the Heat as well.
I would say the Nuggets and the Clippers. I love
Clippers.
All
right. That's probably where I'm going to trend towards right now, Nuggets and Clippers
Nuggets and Clippers.
I like that.
The surprising team... I will go with...
This is tough because the teams in the West are so close, Suns, Kings, Mavs, Lakers, Warriors. All of those are going to be tough teams to beat in the playoffs.
Man, I'm not a Warriors fan, but I'll go with the Warriors.
It's not a bad take, and I'll tell you why. When you watch that team, which is starting to find their identity again over the last month, they're really starting to click on offense again and turn things around. That's not a bad take. It truly, if you look at that team scoring-wise, the NBA is trending towards let's just shoot the ball and outscore the other team, and who cares about playing defense? But they do have some guys that can play defense as well. Draymond Green, being one of them. Andrew Wiggins was great in the NBA.
Gary Payton Jr.
Gary Payton, another great example. That's a good take. What do you think makes that Warriors team different? Just obviously probably Steph Curry, and then the guys that are around him. Pajemski's a good glue guy to have in that offense.
I would say it's definitely Steph. Steph is always that X factor.
Always.
You never know how he performs in the playoffs.
100%.
But the reason why I chose the Warriors team is just how experienced they are in playoffs. Mm-hmm. And that experience is going to help them bounce back.
Definitely.
And that's probably why I choose the Warriors.
That's a great take.
I think they're on the rise. Especially when players like Clay, they are willing to play in the second unit.
Off the bench. And
yeah,
Chris
off
Paul
the bench.
Too.
Yeah.
They need him obviously healthy. But I think did Chris Paul just get back? He might have.
He did.
Did he? Okay.
Yeah.
So obviously that's a big thing for them is the experience they have. They have a lot of guys, that have been in the big moments before.
But I think I would say Chris Paul is also a X factor. Whether he performs well in terms of scoring in the playoffs will also determine how far they go in the playoffs.
Definitely. He's a great guy that can give you, 4 or 5 assists off the bench, and he really transformed that bench unit. Something they struggled with last year with, Jordan Poole being that guy off the bench. Now they have a legit guy that can really make offense, for guys around him. Rather than just focusing on shooting, he's focused on the other guys scoring, dishing it to the paint, kicking it out, to guys.
But you definitely want to see him become more aggressive because I would say in the beginning of the season he wasn't that aggressive in terms of offense.
Yep, you're right. That's a great point.
Yep.
And I think when you look at that Warriors team, the big X factor you said is Steph Curry. And then they have some good glue guys, Andrew Wiggins and Brendan Pajemski, and I was surprised they didn't really make a big move at the deadline. I thought they were going to, but I mean, with them staying still though, it's like okay, I think, because if you have guys like Jonathan Kuminga stepping up like he has been, and guys like Chris Paul getting healthy now, helping out that bench, Klay Thompson, performing well off the bench, especially in the first few games off the bench, he was really hot from three. Like that's going to be a big thing for them in the playoffs. Nobody wants to play the Warriors in the playoffs just because they have the experience and obviously have the firepower to make a run. And that's why I think the West is tough. Like I'd probably say the same two teams, Nuggets and Clippers. I think if the Timberwolves had Karl Anthony Towns healthy for the playoffs, I'd really like them.
Mm-hmm.
But the issue is having Cat tear his meniscus, not really too sure how long he's going to be out. That's a worry for me. So I'm going to say Nuggets and Clippers. Clippers have worried me, though, over the last couple of months. Last month, I should say.
Westbrook is injured, right?
Who'd you say?
Westbrook.
Westbrook is injured. Yep, you got it right. You got it right. He actually fractured his hand.
Mm-hmm.
I thought you said Harden's injured. I was like, is he? I was going to say,
no.
But when you said Westbrook, yes.
Yeah, Westbrook.
Westbrook is banged up, unfortunately. Did fracture his hand. So that's a worry, but hopefully he's back for the playoffs. They do need to get back to the formula that was working, though, for them, in that December and January run where they went on that crazy, stretch of games where they won. So I picked those two teams in the West. The Nuggets, like you said, like we talked about earlier in the episode, like Jamal Murray and Nikola Jokic, they know what it takes to win, like we saw last year. And they're a team that's different because, like, they have Jokic and Murray. Jokic isn't flashy by any means. He just does all the right things. He'll have 25, 15, and 10. And it's like he just does it naturally. It's like it's not like it's, a game where you're watching and you see a guy go for 50 and you're like, wow, this guy's scoring a ton right now. And you can watch it and see it. I think Jokic, when I watch him, he's doing a lot, and then his numbers when I look, it's like double. And that's a testament to how good of a player he is. You don't have to always be, the flashy guy shooting threes, crossing people over. Like, Jokic is a guy that gets the job done without having all of that. So they're a team, I mean, that everyone would probably like to say would win the West. But, I mean, I understand why people pick them, just because they are a deep team. They're experienced now, too, winning last year. They know what it takes. So my team that's under the radar, it's tough. Like, if you see the middle of the pack, Suns, Kings, this is 6 through 10. We got Suns, Kings, Mavericks, Lakers, Warriors, and then I don't think the Rockets at 11 or the Jazz at 12 are going to make it up. Unfortunately, even though I was very high on those two teams heading into the season, if I had to pick one of those teams right now, I would lean with the Kings, which the Suns I think are dangerous too.
That's a good choice.
I'm just going to go based on 7 through 10 here. I'm going to go with the Kings. They're a team I was very high on heading into the season because I love De'Aaron Fox. Obviously, we've seen Domantas Sabonis have a great season. They're a dynamic team where, like, they have guys that step up on given nights. Some nights it'll be Harrison Barnes stepping up. Some nights it's Malik Monk. Some nights it's Keegan Murray. Like, they do have a dynamic team, and I liked what I've seen from them, especially when they're fully healthy. So I'll roll with the Kings being an under-the-radar squad. But, I don't know, the Lakers are starting to click to some degree. At the right time. Right now they're starting to click and playing better basketball as of late.
AD, I think he scored, he scored 27, 25 yesterday.
Yeah. AD, he's been battling a lot of injuries.
Yeah,
like, he hasn't been healthy really, from what I've seen from watching them play. But like you said, 27 points, 25 rebounds, 10 offensive rebounds. 7 steals, 3 blocks, 5 assists. He didn't have a crazy night scoring. He was 9 to 17, which is a good night, 27 points. But you see his impact on the defensive end or the offensive glass. It's just ridiculous. 7 steals, 3 blocks.
See, if I can add another surprising team,
yeah, go ahead.
I would say the Lakers, because you're seeing AD
clicking at the right time.
D'Angelo Russell balling at the right time.
My Clippers last week.
Yeah.
They were ridiculous in that fourth quarter. We blew a 22
And LeBron, we all know that he is possible. Like, it's possible. Anything is possible for him.
It's his last year, maybe, with the Lakers. You never know. You're right, and that could be a big reason. Maybe they just say, let's go on a run here because this is all we got. The only guaranteed season you have is right now. With any guy. Any guy could leave in free agency. You could get traded. So now that the trade, deadline's over, everyone's locked into this team. So hopefully D'Angelo Russell, now that he's playing more comfortably, knowing he's not going to get traded, since that was a big thing, during trade talks, hopefully he plays more comfortably. But yeah, I would agree. I think we had very similar teams in the West. I think it just shows, us having similar teams just shows like how deep that West is to some degree, just because it could be any of those teams we named, even like the 6 through 10 guys, guys on teams like, we mentioned Kevin Durant and Devin Booker, like, those guys could beat anybody any given playoff series as well. It just shows like how wide open the West is. But I like that we picked some similar teams. And now I guess we can move on to the ACC tournament, which I know we got class in about 20 minutes, so we'll make this a quick thing about the ACC tournament. Maybe just a quick 5-minute talk about it. I'll let you start it off. If you want to pick a team, you want to pick individual games, I'll let you figure out what we talk about here.
Yeah, so the ACC basketball tournament is happening in Let me check.
Tomorrow.
Tomorrow, yeah.
March right,
March 12th to March 16th.
Yep.
In Washington D.C.
Correct.
And tomorrow is our BC team playing against the Miami team.
Yep, Miami. Got it
yeah,
right.
and I think they're pretty similar in terms of like rebounding and offense.
Mm-hmm.
So it will be a pretty tight competition.
Yeah, it'll be close. I think with BC, I mean, they've beaten them now twice this season. They just beat them this past week at Miami. The first time BC's won there, I think it was since 2010. So it's going to be an interesting game. Miami's really struggling as of late heading into this one. BC's won their last couple games, which just helped. Yep. They were down actually by 10 points in that game against Miami and then found a way to come back in the second half. Quinton Post was great, 19 points. I think with BC, if they can just win that first game, you never know. The big part of the ACC tournament is winning that first game, getting some momentum, and then maybe going on a run.
Exactly.
Which you would probably agree with that, right? It's just about getting some momentum.
I think it's definitely about that momentum because obviously, I think in college game, if you look at the teams that are playing in the first round, they're pretty similar.
Yeah.
So whoever goes with the flow and whoever performs well and grab that opportunity, they're going to advance a lot more easier than any other teams.
You're right. It's all about clicking at the right time.
Yeah.
That Miami team, I mean, they've lost 9 in a row, so they're not clicking the right time, unfortunately. But anything can happen in the tournament. You just have to win one game to really get on a run and get going. With BC, though, I think what helps them is they've won their last couple games. They've beat Miami twice this year.
Yeah. But
sometimes beating a team a third time, you only have to beat them once technically. Now that it's the playoffs, you scratch off those other games. It's all about just winning tomorrow. But it really is hard to beat a team a third time, and BC's really just got to not take them lightly. It's all about winning tomorrow's game, playing good defense. They need to shoot the ball a little better, BC, which they've had some really good stretches where they've shot the ball well. And
that Quinton logo shot was crazy, though.
Yeah, Quinton Post, he's been taking a lot more threes this year, which I think it's because of the NBA, like we said, it's transformed the game into being a center needs to shoot threes, especially if you want to get drafted and make a career for yourself in the NBA. You have to be able to shoot the three. And I think career-wise, for Quinton Post, it's smart for him to learn how to shoot the three a little more just because if you look at the NBA, it's trending towards guys shooting threes. He shot the three ball well this season.
Pretty well, yeah.
He's been the focal point for BC on offense like we predicted he would be, and he's been good defensively as well. They need him to stay out of foul trouble, though. That's one thing we need is him to stay out of foul trouble. But, so you think BC has what it takes to potentially make a run, which if they beat Miami, I think after that, let me see who they'd be playing. I had a graphic here on my phone. Let me get that open. They would be playing, I think it was...
They'll be playing
Clemson, yep.
And then Virginia.
So Virginia, Syracuse, I apologize. Clemson, then Virginia. If they were to win those games, which we're not going to get too ahead of ourselves. Hopefully we just beat Miami. But do you think they have what it takes? I think they have what it takes to beat Miami, beat Syracuse, even beat Clemson. I keep saying Syracuse just because the graphic here, they're just right above them on the picture of the bracket. I think they can beat Miami. I think they can beat Clemson. I think they lose to UVA, though, if I had to predict. Just because UVA plays very good defense. BC was close to them a few weeks ago, so anything is possible. And I'm rooting for them, obviously, but winning 2 games in the ACC tournament would be good for this team, considering they have, struggled in the ACC this year. They're only 8-12 in ACC play. So winning 2 games and losing a third one, maybe a close one versus Virginia, wouldn't be a bad thing.
Yeah, it would be good.
But where do you think they end up in the tournament?
I'll probably think quarterfinals.
Okay, so same thing as me just about. So you think they get to that game against UVA? So let's say they get to that game against UVA. Anything's possible. And then if they were to beat UVA, they'd have to probably go up against Duke. Duke would probably win their quarterfinal game. Which is tough. Even though Duke has lost, a couple games this year to UNC.
Number 2.
I mean, they're still very good.
Yeah.
They've lost a couple games to UNC. They're 15-5 in the ACC, 24-7 overall. And they did lose to UNC twice. UNC's number 1, in regular season play in the ACC. But I don't know, if you were to pick a team to come out of the ACC, do you have one you'd say? I'd probably roll with Pittsburgh, which they're an under-the-radar team, won 3 in a row. I actually watched the game against BC last week. I was actually at that game, and it was a fun one to watch. They shot the 3 very well, which I'm a BC fan. I'm rooting for BC at the end of the day. But I do admire teams that play the game the right way, play good defense, hustle, shoot the ball very well, hit their free throws. That's something they did well in that game. They really limited turnovers in that game, played good defense, and shot the 3 very well. They were 16 of 30 from 3, 53% from 3, and they won that game 90-65. Really tough game for BC, which I'm always rooting for BC at the end of the day. But like I said, I do respect those teams that play good defense and hustle. And Pittsburgh's a team that I think is under the radar, a team to watch out for in the ACC tournament. Right now, It's a long shot pick, probably, considering everyone's probably going to take UNC or Duke, and rightfully so, very good teams. I'm going to roll with Pittsburgh winning the ACC. It's crazy, but I think they win the ACC tournament. Do you have a team they think can make a run or win it? I'll let you pick, which it's tough to pick a team to win it, but if you want to, you're more than welcome to say.
I would still go for Duke.
Okay, respectful.
How,
yep, I respect that.
Yeah, how experienced they are. I mean, all the other teams are very experienced as well in terms of ACC tournament.
Respectful decision there. Respectable.
Yeah.
Yep.
I mean, Duke has that. Has that.
Thing
in them.
They have that factor in them where they can just turn it on any moment. And,
exactly.
Even though they did lose to UNC twice, they wouldn't have to play UNC until the finals. So they don't have to worry about that. They just have to really focus on winning those quarterfinals and semifinals games.
Yeah.
And you don't know who you're going to match up against in the finals. Anyone can, win any given game, especially in a tournament with single elimination. It's like just because you were, let's say,
number two seed,
it
doesn't matter.
You still have to beat those teams, in order to get to the finals.
Did you see the women's basketball today? South Carolina.
I didn't. I didn't see
crazy.
It. South Carolina was really good this year, though.
Yeah,
I saw a couple of their games
lost,
on ESPN.
And that last shot was wide open.
So they won the game, though, but it was very close. You're saying, okay.
Yeah.
I got to get into these games a little bit more too for the women's side as well, because they're starting at the same time probably.
Yep.
As the
men's,
LSU
right? Lost this year.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, which is crazy.
You never know. Like last year they could be the champions, but this year they lost.
You're right. That's the crazy thing. It's like anyone can win any given game, and especially in a tournament. Especially in the ACC tournament and March Madness, like anybody can win any given game. But when does that start? Let me see. I want to make sure I get that right here. Because women's March Madness is starting very soon, right? Let me see here.
March Madness.
I think it's coming up because they got the tournament games now. Like the ACC tournament for women's was just this past weekend. Beginning on March 20th is the big dance. So, okay, so I got to get more into that as well. Hopefully I'll have some predictions for that tournament. We can do that, though. If you want to do that, we can do a women's preview and men's preview as well.
I had a great time today.
Much appreciated, which now we're going to dip just because we do have to run to class. But Jason, absolute pleasure having you on. Thank you so much for taking the time. Really was awesome hearing your experience of playing basketball overseas, Taiwan, Shanghai, London, Washington, Boston. I mean, you've had a great trip there, over the whole course of school, growing up, now being in Boston. I do appreciate you sharing a lot of your journey with us, and I'm excited for more times of us doing this and talking basketball.
Yeah, looking forward to doing the next one.
Much appreciated, Jason, and thank you guys for taking the time. Much appreciated as always. See you guys in the next episode. Have a good one, and take care. Thank you.